All right, welcome y'all. We're going to go ahead and get started. Like I said, we are recording this webinar, and as we're going to do a few more in the next couple days and weeks on different topics, and so we'll make that available. And we're recording this webinar. I'm going to share my screen a couple different times throughout it, and then I also have a document that I will post for y'all with all of the applications and processes that I chat with you about. A couple things before we get started. I've got it, again, everyone muted as you come in, so it will help with the webinar recording piece of it. And then at the end, I'll unmute everyone for people to ask questions. And please feel free to use the chat box as you go through and post questions for me throughout the webinar, and I'll get to those afterwards. And then a few of you, I had opened up on my personal Instagram and Facebook earlier today, just some questions that you might have when it comes to remote working. And so I'll get to those towards the end too. But again, thanks for joining. My name is Stephen Trotter. I am the Associate Director of Wellness and Fitness for East Carolina University in the eastern part of North Carolina. And then I'm also an adjunct faculty member at Coastal Carolina Community College, which is located right beside of Camp Lejeune in North Carolina, and I teach online there. And then I'm also an adjunct faculty member at North Hennepin Community College, which is part of the Minnesota state system. So I teach online there. And it's the reason I tell you that is because of my past history working remotely and working with remote teams. And then in addition to all of that, I also am a consultant with Globetrotter Wellness Solutions. So I wouldn't say that I'm a total expert when it comes to remote working, but I've learned some things along the way, and I have a lot of experience in remote working and telecommuting. And the reason I say that I'm not a complete expert in it is I don't think you can ever be a complete expert in it, because it's a lot of trial and error. And then as we all know with technology is constantly changing and ever evolving. And because of that, we have to make sure that we are staying on top of things, because even in the remote workforce, we have to make sure that we are staying up to date with what's happening. So my background is I have worked in university recreation pretty much my entire career, but back in 2017, I left my full-time position at Virginia Tech when I was working at the time to start the consulting company. And so for 3 years, I worked completely remote, working with multiple teams all throughout the United States and with clients all around the world. So part of that is we had to learn how to work remotely. And a lot of it, me going to mentors that I found in the kind of same remote piece of it, I learned some tips and tricks of the trade. And then about a year ago, I had the opportunity to step into the position here at East Carolina Campus Rec and Wellness. So serving as their associate director over the wellness and fitness areas, which we kind of refer to as well-being, just so we're all on the same page with that. When we refer to wellness and fitness, in the early 2000s, our university merged campus wellness and campus rec. So that is what you would consider your traditional health promotion as well. So further than that, let's get right into it. And I know we're all in remote, most of us are in remote environments there. So you may end up seeing my dog Roxy pop up, and she joined one of our conference calls earlier this morning. But other than that, we're going to dive right into tips and tricks for remote working and managing projects and people in the remote workforce. So again, once again, feel free to use the chat box and post questions, and I'll get to those throughout the end. So really, the main three pieces, if I can boil it down for you, when it comes to telecommuting, remote working, or even just in general in-person workforce, is to break things down into a process of eliminate, automate, and delegate. And the first piece of elimination is really your goal is to be effective, not efficient, because the difference between effectiveness and efficiency is with efficiency, we are able to do a lot of things with limited resources, or to do a lot of things in a given amount of time. But being effective means that we're only doing what's necessary to still yield the same outcome. So weeding out all of those other pieces that are unnecessary for us to do to still make that same impact, still quality control and everything else. So we won't spend our time on eliminate today. We're going to spend most of our time today on automate, which is using automation systems and building things yourself to help you with this remote workforce, but also once you're back into the office too, or for those of you that are still working in person. And then the last piece of it is Delegate, which we'll dive into a little bit today too. And the reason I say Delegate is last is because you don't want to delegate a task or a project, especially a task, to someone that you should eliminate, because then that just adds more things for them to do if it's unnecessary. So to start, and again, I want you to use this as a resource. Feel free to ask questions, and you don't have to fix everything in a day. And I know we're going into these uncharted waters, and remote working or teleworking or supervising people in a remote setting may be new to you, but no, what's most important is you don't have to get it right the first time. You just have to do it. And so I hope that you're able to take a couple of tidbits as we dive through this. So the first piece of it is you've got to set a plan. And the plan is, before you go into it, you either spend some time upfront planning, or you get yourself into a ball that's rolling and you can't stop it, and then it becomes uncontrollable. So I encourage you, if you haven't done so already, get with your team and devise a communication plan. When I first stepped into my role at ECU about a year ago, my team, first, we have to have a communication plan to begin with, because we have 2 campuses located in Greenville, our health sciences campus, our main campus, but we also have a pretty good amount of distance education students that are about 8,000 students who are already online. And we just launched a campus in the Outer Banks, as well as we have a campus in Italy. So we haven't done as much with we are starting to scratch the surface with the Outer Banks, but we haven't done as much from the recreation side past the Outer Banks piece of it. And that's Roxy talking on the call now. But with that being said, we have to devise a plan. So when I got into the office, I met with a team and we devised a communication plan, and I'm going to share my screen with you so you can see that plan. And if you are unable and you're just dialing in from a phone right now, no worries. This will be recorded and it will be available for you afterwards. So don't worry if you are not able to see the screen at this present moment. So I'm going to make sure I have the chat box still open so I can see y'all. So what you're looking at is our Trello board, and we will get to this later, but really what I want to show you is this communication piece of it. And I posted it into the Facebook group, but this is our plan of communication for us. And this is unique for us, but you're going to need to find one that's specific for you. So, and you can modify these throughout the way. So this is our chain of command when it comes to communication. So our first line of communication is we use Microsoft Teams. We are a Microsoft campus. For those of you that are at a Google predominant campus, I encourage you to use Slack. Slack is a free, all of these applications I'm telling you about today are free and customizable for you to be able to use. So as we start to go down the funnel, you have a choice of using Teams as your communication or Slack. Both have mobile apps. And in the communication, what we decided is that we use this Microsoft Team chat feature for minimal task assigning. So we do not want to assign tasks in this chat, because the chat is just for communication, quick communication. Every morning we do a coffee chat in the team chat. And it's like, hey, good morning. How's it going? Some kind of water cooler talk, if you shall. And we tell everyone else on our team about what's going on today. So this is where I'm going to be at. If you need me, we always like to say, slide into my DMs if you need me. And it's just a quick hello and what's going on. But on Mondays, we have a little bit of a longer chat. So what we do is we're saying that, hey, my greatest win from last week, so win, W-I-N, that's my North Carolina accent coming out, but my greatest win or success from last week is this. So this is my proudest moment from the last 7 days. And this week, my biggest focus is X, or whatever that is. And then the other piece is we share any frustrations or any large projects or solutions that we're looking for, and what's frustrating me or what I need everyone's help with. That way we know right off the bat on Mondays what our major projects are for each of our key players in our team that are able to communicate, and we know how to help each other throughout the week. And even in this remote environment now, where we're all, as of Tuesday, the 17th at 5 p.m., all but non-mandatory employees were moving to teleworking. So we still have that chat every morning, except we do it through Zoom now, and we can have these fun backgrounds that you're seeing right now, and we just have those every morning. So the same way I encourage you to do that with Slack as well. if you're on that Google campus. So that's just, again, that team piece is just for quick communication, nothing long, nothing, extravagant. You can direct message, group message, and so forth. So the next key piece of that is what we use is Voxer. Voxer is free. It's an app you can download. You can post your usernames, and it's a quick on your phone, and it's almost like a walkie-talkie. So I'll show you. I don't know if this will actually show you on my phone here, but so you can see the Voxer app here. And so I can just press a button, record, and it sends a voice message to one of my colleagues. And this is great for when you're walking from one spot to another, or you're walking out to the parking lot, or you're on the go and you don't have time to sit and type, but you can chat through that and just send a message. And so again, Voxer is for a little bit more when communication is needed more than that initial chat through that team, but it's not as needed as a phone call, right? So it's like we're not taking up time for a phone call, we're just sending a quick message for each other. And then, so we have that streamlining communication. So again, you find your communication channel of those quick messaging, whether it's Microsoft Teams, whether it's Slack, or if you have another solution on your campus. And then we move to step 2, which for us is like Voxer. And again, all free systems that you can use. So then we come down to where your document storage is that you can access on the go. So many of you that are Google campuses, you have access to Google Drive. And I've worked on institutions before where we were a Google campus, and it's great because typically you have unlimited storage, which is super nice. But if you are in a Microsoft campus, although Teams and if you've used SharePoint previously and years ago when it was really clunky, it's less clunky now. And those apps don't take up as much room on your mobile devices or tablets. So the team apps, if you're a Microsoft campus, that team app can get to your documents as well. So that's what, document storage. And the reason I'm going in this role is because the automation piece comes in with whatever you're using as your project management tool. So for us, that's Trello. And Trello for us is assigning and communication on task, and it serves as our main project management board. So it's a one-stop shop. So all of our team in the morning, no matter where we're at and where we're working from, the 2 things that we do first are we jump on Teams and we open up Trello. And what you have noticed that I've said is we don't check email first thing in the morning, and you shouldn't check email first thing in the morning, which I'll get to shortly. So with that, you might have solutions already in your department. Again, most of these are free. You have Trello, you have Asana, you have Monday, which is a new one, Airtable, and there's plenty ones. And if you're using something that I haven't mentioned, please feel free to drop it in the chat, and I'll make sure I include that in the recording as well. But it's becoming that hub. So it's that hub where all of our team goes in together. And that's what we use for that. So, and then I'm going to jump to the next strategy, and then I'm going back to that project management piece because that is a big bulk of what you need to be able to understand and do when you're working remotely. So when it comes to our team meetings, so this is whether it's virtual or in-person communication, because what we all know, and I can probably say that most of you feel that in a higher education setting, you feel that you're in meetings a lot. And I don't know, for those of you that are Microsoft campuses, one of the things that I actually like is every Monday we get an automated well-being report sent to us from Office 365 telling us what, how much of our time was spent in meetings, how much of our time was spent in email. It tells you if you're opening email or responding to people late at night that you might want to rethink that. And it's a pretty cool feature that it gives you that little well-being report. The same thing if, for those of you that have iPhones or Apple devices, you get your weekly screen time report. So that's kind of a cool feature that's already built in with that, really that artificial intelligence behind the scenes working. So when it comes to meetings, we strategize. And right now in the remote setting, I encourage you, communication is key. Having plenty of communication, but not over communicating where that you end up putting people into a panic. And so just escalate it a little bit more than your standard communication, but don't go overboard with it. So set up your meetings and when they need to occur. And as you're looking at the screen here, what you're being able to see is typically in our wellness and fitness team, the associate director which is myself and our assistant directors, meet weekly together. And then we also have one-on-one, your supervisor check-ins as well. And then that kind of goes throughout. And then we have a team meeting, which is myself all the way through our program assistant and our graduate assistants. We meet on a monthly basis because there's additional communication that's happening throughout. But one of the key pieces, and I'll be the first to admit that sometimes I slack on it or fall behind on, not to use Slack, like pun intended of Slack the app, but is not getting an agenda out. Because when it comes to meetings, having that important start and stop time, and if you have that meeting set aside for an hour and you get done with stuff in 43 minutes, cut the meeting and let people go. Don't just sit around and, because you end up escalating, you're taking up priorities that somebody could be using elsewhere. So getting that agenda out, and with those connections, when we talk about Trello, there's pretty cool features that you can add in to help you in this remote workforce. Like there's Soapbox, there's decisions, there's different pieces that you can add into, whether it's Trello, your Teams, your Google, whatever, so that helps automate and sends out those meeting minutes for you. So use the robots. The robots are here, so use them, because it will greatly help you throughout this, not only when you're in person, but also when we are in the remote teleworking environment that many of us are in currently already. And then with that, again, we'll come back to scheduling those meetings, but email is our last resort. And your ultimate goal, whether you're in person in an office or you're remote, your ultimate goal is not to use email unless it's a last resort. So email is not an effective use for inside of your organization. For clients, for members, for external, yes, people are going to reach you through that the way. They're also going to reach you through your departmental social media channels, but try to keep people, your colleagues, out of your inbox. So I'm going to come back to that, but we're first diving directly into Trello. So again, there's many solutions out here. I'm just going to show you an example of how we use it from Trello, because I've used it in many different places. So in the sense here, and again, Trello is free, and I am more than happy to share with you this How to Trello list to the left. So if that's something you want to implement in your setting, more than happy to share that with you. And again, I'll make it available for you with the documents after the recording. So to give you the rundown, as you're still looking at the screen here, and again, for those of you calling in, I'll talk through it, and you can watch the screen grabs afterwards. So how to Trello. So everyone, essentially what we're looking at is list. So the way we use it is we have a list with each of our team members' names on it, and then assignments will be dropped onto the list. So those are essentially projects that we're working on. And if we can essentially pass it back and forth, we can tag each other, and so forth. So the list itself, and for our setting, is the list is who the actual team member is. Now, one of the opportunities and ways that I've used this previously, which I found not as effective, is having a list that says needs to be done, currently doing, done, because what happens is you miss the ownership of it. And in this way, we can all see the ownership of what's actually happening. So again, lists are for our names, and then we also have that FAQ section, important information, where we have quick links where somebody can get to and go to our internal website. The parking lot is essentially what we use as a holding pattern for events or programs until they become specifically assigned to someone. Or each year, if we change the point of contact for a program or event, we go into that piece of it. So, and I showed you the communication for us. So list, again, we have a list with our names on it. Cards are these individual things like here, and cards are essentially tied to one specific project. And a card can rely on basically all the details for that project. So I'll show you one that we might look at here is, I'll pull up, let's see, I'll pull up our strategic plan here because we've been working on this for a while. So this is kind of an ongoing piece here, and it's not the one that I want to show you. Anyhow, we'll get to it in a second here. Here we go. So as we see here, I've tagged the members on here. We have our quick links, so to get to the university strategic plan, the university mission, the values, everything we need to know and what our goals are, so we can continue to work through. And this project is ever going because this is constant for us, and so it's an ongoing project in a way. And with that, that is one specific project is a card. And then labels, the labels are what you can see here is what we've tagged specifically for us. You can create the labels that's specific to you and your organization. And then don't forget to use the due date pieces of it, because the due date gives us an actual date, and it will send you those reminders. So we can see that this was actually, it was completed, but it's still setting on there because we need it for some additional things. So that's really how this works. And the main key piece of it is why we use Trello is the ownership piece of passing back and forth. So for example, is, you know, if we're looking at this strategic plan, and I would like for Suzanne or Karen, some of our team members, to take a look at it, I can actually comment and tag them in this, and I can move it or slide it over to their list, so it becomes the ownership of them. And this is where I'm going to dual line and talk about that email communication piece and why we want to keep people outside of our inbox, because the communication piece in email, what happens is when you just send an email out, it's like throwing, we're going to use the sports analogy since we're going to down some sports right now, obviously in the current setting, but we're going to use the sports analogy of sending an email out to a listserv is just like throwing a basketball onto a court. And what you're seeing is people are like, what just happened? Like, who is that even for? Like, what? I don't know what to do with this. And when you look at it this way, using a project management system, especially in this remote workforce, is I am literally taking the basketball, and jokes for those of you that know me personally, because you know I can't even dribble a basketball, but to throw a basketball, and I might toss it to Karen, and Karen's got in possession of that ball, and she's looking around doing what she needs to do with it, and then she might pass it to Suzanne, and then Suzanne might pass it back to me, and that's how the projects go. And we use these and that's how we use it to communicate within each other. So this is one of the pieces, and as you're kind of going in this remote environment, I want to show you two other ways that you can use this as a solution. One of the things that we do is, for many of you that have intake programs or actually for, I'll show you that one first and I'll come to that. So many of you that have intake programs, what we end up doing is we bring everything in here. So because not only do we have your traditional on-demand fitness programs where we go and deliver exercise programs to communities and groups off-site or even inside of our facilities, but we also do our traditional, our kind of the programs that we offer are usually in categories of alcohol and other drugs, sexual health, healthy relationships, nutrition, body image, mental health, stress management, and then the movement and exercise piece. So that's where you'll see these tags coming in here. And how it comes in is once the request comes in, we piece it together and we put it here. And so once that initial contact is made, we drag it over here. And you can see in the ownership here, if we take a look at this one, the request was made, we see all of the information that we are looking at, and we have that in there. And we also use the dates. The due dates is actually once it's scheduled. And then the programs that are scheduled are in this program schedule until they go into follow-up and evaluation. And then our team and whoever processes these, after the evaluation it's been completed, it goes to this here. And so, especially when it comes to annual reports or reporting things on a weekly, monthly, quarterly basis, it's easy to run these reports and everything's in one spot. So this is essentially for those of you that have experience in corporate, commercial, or have worked in settings where you have a CRM, like a customer relationship management program. This is basically how we utilize it. And so we can just kind of transfer the information around, and we all have access to it, so we can get to it in any time that we have questions, and especially for being in a remote type environment. So from a planning feature, because many of you are still going to be planning already for your upcoming programs this summer, for the fall, one of the things that we do is our team, as it relates to our programs, we do, for example, Munchie Monday, Therapeutic Thursday, and Fresh Food Fridays, which are weekly events that we, what we kind of call our Discover line, which is just usually quick 30 seconds, 60 seconds interactions, where in a 2-hour time span, we might interact and engage with about 200 students on campus. So when we're using this feature is you'll see that we have the dates in because we can flip and use this calendar feature, and now we can take a look at it from a calendar point of view of what's happening. And so we can see once it's dragged out that event was completed. So and then you can kind of flip through and you can see everything from that standard. And again, our tags in this setting, we're using it on whether it's happening on main campus or West Campus. So for us, again, all of these Trello programs are completely free, and I'm giving you these as examples to hopefully give you some tips and tricks as you're moving into a remote or teleworking environment. And even if you're not going there yet, just something that you can even use to help streamline communication and management inside of your department or organization. The last piece of it I'll show you is one of the boards that we built, and I built is basically dissected a book as an organization. We are moving towards like the 5 elements of well-being, the Gallup model for our University Wellbeing Collective. So what I've done is I've dissected the book itself and put all the information on there. And if any of you have the Gallup model and you want access to this, I do have it set as a public board, so I can make that available to you and you can view it, and pulled everything with the resources and the sources from there. So that's how Trello works for us. And again, there's many examples like for Monday, for Airtable, Asana. Our marketing team uses Basecamp to manage projects, and some of you may use that as well. So we have a lot of different moving parts, but again, take home points from this so far are devise the plan. That's the most important part. If you get nothing out of today's webinar, it's make the plan before you get the ball rolling, because you have to balance that piece of planning and action, and they have to work together, and you can't sit and plan for too long. Because you got to take action, and you can't just take action without some sort of a plan. So it's that ebb and flow and making those work coexistingly together. And that's one of the ways that how you can manage that is, again, because we're tossing and we're passing that basketball from one person to another along the way. So we're passing the ball as we move throughout this through this opportunity. So I'm going to stop the screen share momentarily. We'll kind of come back to that along the way. So again, so what we've talked about so far, devising your plan. So how are you going to communicate with that chat? And again, to the quick chat feature. And yes, I know the simple solution is just to use your text messages. I encourage you to not do that, because what you end up doing is everything just gets flooded in your text messages. And then you're trying to find threads, and then you're trying to delete the messages from your phone for more storage. And you can't figure out when you are sending a meme to your friend, or talking to a sibling, or trying to get things for work. So make it so it's easily accessible for the team. And so if you can funnel all of that communication into one channel, that will be the ideal situation. So, and again, I said I was going to come back to email, and this is to the point where I'm going to chat a little bit about email. And with that sports analogy is, if we're going to the ice rink and, using the goalie example, use systems as your goalie. So keep people out of your inbox, because you end up spending so much time. And if you do have that, if you are a Microsoft campus and you get those well-being reports that come in automatically from 365 each week, I encourage you to take a look at it, because it is really eye-opening to see how much time you're actually spending on in meetings or on email. And it will actually even tell you now, would you like me to schedule some focus time on your calendar? And you can click the button and it will block out parts of your calendar that are currently open to keep people from scheduling meetings with you, or just so you can actually dedicate some time to get some work done. So with it comes to meetings, and utilizing email is one of the ways that we end up taking up a lot of time and energy in email, is going back and forth planning meetings. And so 2 things I want to point out is, do not use email as a conversation chain. This is not like, once we all know, we've been on that reply all where, 45 people are giving their opinion about something. Try to streamline it, because it's flooding your inbox and then it's making you work harder. to actually get what you want to get done because you're spending your time threading through email. So utilize the calendar feature in your system. So if you have something already built in for internal organizations, if you, again, are a 365 school, you have the scheduling feature that's already built into Office 365. The same way if you're a Google campus, you have those features already built into it. So capitalize on that and try to avoid going into the conversation of what time works best for you. Let's meet next week. What time works best for you? And I understand that some of us, our colleagues on campus, we have to communicate a little bit more strategically, especially with our colleagues in student health and counseling and departments that use, whether it's Titanium or other actual patient scheduling systems, because they don't always use the same scheduling system as we do. So we have to devise a plan a little bit more. But I encourage you, if you don't already, some of the solutions like what used to be called Schedule Once, which is now Once Hub, or Calendly, those are great things to have links that say like book a meeting with me, and especially even with having that internal of your organization where they may be able to book an appointment on your calendar, but also to have something for your outside, because many of you work with vendors, work with people that are trying to schedule appointments with you, and give them a link so you're not going back and forth, because we all know that when you go back and forth, you're just delaying the opportunity to actually have that conversation. And tips when it comes to email, again, email is a last resort. And, you know, in other groups, I've seen where even when campuses aren't necessarily adopting and adapting to the students' needs, where they're refusing to answer questions for students via Snapchat, Insta, Facebook, TikTok, whatever, and they're saying, well, send us an email, but you have the opportunity and you have their attention now. So why are we creating more barriers to entry for a conversation with someone that we can make a huge impact with? So match your communication style to the people you're trying to communicate with. And there's lots of resources out there. And again, when we move into this remote environment, you have to change your communication style to adapt to each person you're communicating with, or people that you supervise, or that you manage up with, or that are on your own horizontal level. So when it comes to email, I encourage you to use filters, tags, and tabs, or anything that you can do so you can create rules and preset folders that go into things. And I encourage you in your email, I used to be the type of person that had a ton of emails or a ton of folders. And instead of doing it that way, I started changing things around. And I have folders in my work email that are more like budget reports that are, you know, FYI CRW, FYI to the university, and to done. And so as I get things to done that may be in my email, I'll drop them into done. And then I have a folder that's just well-being ideas as things come in from internal or external to the organization. So whatever works for you. So the second piece of it is, and if you, again, when it comes to email, if the only thing you can even at least explore is explore this. When it comes to projects, batch everything. So, and what I mean by batch is we look at we look at time and we chunk it and we say, all right, for 30 minutes, I am going to check email. For 30 minutes, I am going to work on this budget report. For 30 minutes, I'm going to work on my group fitness instructor training plan. Whatever that means, but batch it, because what happens is you'll end up looking at a screen, you're going into writer's block, and you want to batch things so you can really focus your attention on that. And one of the tips and one of the questions was that I got in my Insta story this morning was, how do you stay motivated and on task? And I encourage you to put movement breaks in between those batchings, whether it's standing up, whether it's taking a lap around your building, whether it's standing up and doing 2 squats, whether it's playing like a little game on like a brain teaser. We, in our team meetings at Campus Rec and Wellness, we actually start all of our meetings with an activate, which is just a 2 to 3 minute, sometimes a little bit longer activity that turns your brain on or your body on. And that's also great for you to do for yourself, especially when you're working in a remote environment where you're not used to working alone, or with only the kids or the dogs or neighbors or whatnot. So use that batching technique. So I encourage you to batch emails probably about 30 minutes at a time and twice a day. So, and with that, I would take it a step further and tell you to batch sometime before lunch and sometime after when it comes to email, but don't start your day with email and don't end your day with email. Because what happens is if you start your day with email, you end up giving the ability of to control your day. You're giving the control that you have of your day to other people if you start with your email, because what you're doing is you're starting with your email and you're doing things that what everyone wants from you. And spend some time getting some of your projects and getting your plan of action for that day before opening up your email and going into that. The same way with the end of the day too. Don't close your day, because then you're just going to add additional stress and anxiety to yourself of other things that you have to do. So batching is super important, not only for email, but projects itself. And one of my tips, and when we were at the National Wellness Conference last year, I was in a session, and if you're familiar with like T accounting charts where you have like one line and there's on the top, we did an activity that really helped us focus more on batching. Is basically we had 2 T accounting charts, and we were given basically a 2-minute time frame. So, and on the first side of the on the left side of the T accounting chart, we were told to write as many states in the United States of America as possible. We were given a minute to do it. And then we were told on the right side of the chart to name as many countries in the world as you could in 1 minute. And so we did that, and then we flipped to the other T accounting chart. And then in that 2-minute time span, on the left side, we named TV shows. And on the right side, I can't remember what we did, but like makes and models of cars, for example. And every 15 to 20 seconds, the facilitator would tell you to switch and go TV shows, cars, TV shows, cars. And you had to regain your thought. And that's like an actual application that you can have your team do and realize what the benefit of batching tasks, projects, and emails, because your brain isn't necessarily firing back and forth as quick like that. So it's just a tip and trick when it comes to that. And even if, in certain parts of the year, and especially even right now, feel free to, as long as it's fine with your organization, to set an automatic response of your email saying that, thank you for your email. I want to confirm I did receive your email. Right now I'm checking email twice a day, and I will get back to you in 48 business hours or whatever. The same way that I've had friends and colleagues do the same thing with their office phone and say that they check voicemail only twice a day, which now many of us with the voice over internet phones, they get channeled into our email anyway, so then we can kind of control it that way. So those are some tips with using the auto response, and build in even with times. For example, if we are in trainings or I'm at a conference, I'll have my autoresponder say that, right now I'm in workshops for the next 2 days. If this is immediate, if you have Voxer, you can even drop me a note on Voxer, or if you would like to schedule a time to chat, then here's a link to my calendar. And you can actually even set it up. So in this in this remote environment, which we're currently in, by using the automatic feature on whether it's Zoom, freeconferencecall.com is a great resource too, to do these video calls, because it's free, completely free. You're not limited on time. You're just limited on storage space. If you end up needing, if you want to record and store your meetings in the cloud. But using pieces like that and give somebody the opportunity to automatically request a meeting with you, and then you have different solutions, whether they can automatically get it booked, or you have them send you 3 times that are available on your schedule and you choose. So many different options are out there. But trying to automate that solution, and again, in this working environment. And before I kind of turn it over to questions, I want to kind of close out with a few more things of final tips and take-home points of this remote working environment and tips for telecommuting. Is, for one, again, I can't stress enough to batch everything. So to make sure that we're batching everything, because again, it can be a struggle, and I know that working remotely or can be challenging, or managing people remotely can be challenging. So do things that build into your day. Again, one of the questions that I got from Instagram this morning was how to stay motivated, and start your day with movement, even if it's like 10 minutes. And again, there are plenty of companies out there. Less Meals on Demand is opened up for free. Peloton has 90 days for free. Down Dog Yoga is free. There's so many solutions right now for us to be able to at least move a little bit in the morning, even if it's going for a walk outside and getting some fresh air. And that will help us get our day started and batch everything throughout the day. and don't feel like you have to keep that 8 to 5 schedule. If your movement between batching is changing laundry from the washer to the dryer, that gets you up and moving. It takes your mind off from that topic and work it back in. Number 2 is set boundaries, and that becomes set boundaries of breaks and exercise and movement and meditation and whatever that is for you, but set boundaries and determine how and when you're going to work. Because again, for this to work for you, you need to stay in control of your, don't let other people control your schedule. Control your own schedule, and that will help your peace of mind. The other piece of it is, I would say, set up a successful working environment. And right now, again, for those of us that have been, or for those of you that are being thrown into telecommuting or teleworking, and you don't have everything the way you would want it to be, and I'll give you an example now. I am in between selling and buying a house right now. So my home office that I used for so long and worked out of is completely gone because my house had to get remodeled from the hurricane, and I have a temporary place before I close on the new house. And so my home office has become the dining room table. And it's not perfect. There's stuff everywhere. But again, know that it's not perfect. You just got to do it, and you just got to move forward with it and take those small steps along the way. But set up your environment, whether it's having candles, some natural light, music playing in the background. If you're on Spotify, there's a ton of solutions on Spotify and playlists that have help with focus, morning productivity, afternoon productivity, and so forth. So again, tips for success: batch everything, set boundaries, set yourself up for a working environment. And I guess the final piece that I would say, and then I'll open it up for communication and questions, is know that nothing ever gets easier. So no matter what situation you're going into, the same way I like to use like squats and exercise. A squat is a squat. A squat is constant. Whatever weight you have on the bar, if you're squatting 265, if you have 265 pounds on a bar and you're squatting it, it's not ever getting easier because that's 265 pounds, but over time you're getting stronger, so it feels easier. And it's the same way going into situations that are uncertainty, uncharted waters. Being thrown into a teleworking or remote working environment is, no matter who you are, what phase you are into life, when you're being in this situation, it's not going to get easier because it's constant, but you find more ways to get better at it and more effective at it. So that's a piece that I encourage you to think about, is knowing that like you just get more effective doing those things. The same way, apply it to the job that you're doing now and how long you've been into it. It's experiential knowledge, and the more experience that you have doing that, you get more effective at executing that. So that's kind of one piece of it. And my other piece is trust. And I was having a conversation with someone yesterday and this morning too, is a lot of our institutions right now are saying, well, how are we going to manage time? How are we going to track somebody's timesheet? And how do we know if they're working? And my thought is, well, how do you know if they're working with they're at work? Like, just because somebody walks into a building and sits down in an office doesn't mean they're actually working. And my piece of that, my thought process is that the quickest way to destroy your organizational culture, or to create disengaged employees, is to let them know that you don't trust them. And not trusting your employees is one of the quickest way you can destroy your organizational culture. And the other piece of it is that if you don't trust your employees, it sounds like that's a hiring issue, not the employees issue. Because if we are not being able to trust our employees, we need to take a look at our own hiring practices, because it seems like we need to do a better job at hiring if we're hiring people that we can't trust. So that's something to keep in mind. I know I covered a lot of different things, and the questions that I got this morning were the questions on how to stay motivated throughout the day and staying on task, and how to, in addition to that, how to stay connected. And one of the things is like using fun backgrounds like this. One of the fun, I'll give this a little funny tidbit. In our call this morning, our colleague Suzanne I always tell her she's got the office too hot, and she refers to me as the devil because I always think the office is too hot and she doesn't think it's that hot. So in the background on our call this morning, I changed the background to like just fire in our call, and she found that really funny. And I remember to change it before this. But So other than that, I'm going to open it up for questions. You can feel free to do the chat. I am changing the setting in here to allow you to unmute yourself. So if you have questions and you want to ask it verbally, feel free to do so. I'm turning that unmute off, so you now all have control to unmute yourself. And so you can do it that way, or put your questions in the group chat or directly to me. So I'll give us a few minutes to ask questions. So one question is, do you connect Trello through Teams or just keep it separate? Great question. I didn't actually talk about that earlier, but yes, you can do that, and we can connect that. With Google, it's actually pretty cool because if you're a Google institution, Trello will connect to it and your documents will already be there into a quick link in Trello for you. But also, if you use like Trello, Slack, and Google, the bots inside of Slack and Trello will actually send you messages and say, hey, somebody's waiting for your approval on this. And so if you're able to connect that, I encourage you to connect it because that's an automation piece. So a couple other questions. Fun background on Zoom. How did you do that? So if you are using Zoom, beside your stop video button or start video, there's an up arrow. And if you click that, you can choose your virtual background and change that depending on what type of computer or laptop you're using. It may require you to have a green screen. Some of our colleagues that use Surface Pros were unable to do it. But anyway, click the up arrow beside the video button. You can change your virtual background. You can use these, add your own videos, or add your own pictures. So the question is, share some of the Activate ideas for starting off team meetings. Yeah, so just a few that comes to mind is that we have done, I always like the one I've done this plenty of times, is the 1, 2, 3. So if I am talking to Lisa, for example, I'll say 1, Lisa says 2, I say 3, and then we reverse it. And then we change the 1 to a snap, and then we try that. We change the 2 to a clap and a 3 to a stomp. That's a really fun one, doesn't take too much time, and it's a brain teaser. One time that we did a little bit longer, one of our colleagues, we broke up into teams in our full staff meeting, and we actually had an amazing race in one of our facilities to go find all the emergency exits and pull tabs, little sticky notes from the emergency exits. We've done video quizzes. We usually end all of our meetings with a Kahoot, which is a free app that you can do quizzes, and it's also you can get recall of information. But those are a couple different ones, and they're a little not necessarily outdated, but they're not as fresh videos. But if you go to our website, CRW, kind of like campusrecwellness.ecu.edu, there is a section where you can actually look at some of the Activate videos from before. So those are some Activate ideas. Again, 2 to 3 minutes, doesn't need to be anything major. And ending your meetings, we always end our meetings, regardless whether in person or virtual, with tell me something good. So we always want to end on a positive note, and it doesn't have to be work related. It can be that whatever, that you got your workout on that morning, but we always finish our meeting with tell me something good. And the other question for the bit about the bots and meeting minutes. Yes, so for those of you that joined in a little bit later, I have a document that's kind of a flow chart that I'll make available in the meeting notes, as well as once I get this video turned around, I will put that on YouTube and unlist it and send you all that as well. So the bots information will be in there, and all the recorded video will be in there as well too. Other questions? All right, well, that is a wrap for today. Thank you all so much for taking time to chat with me today. Like I said, meeting minutes, that flow chart that I was talking about, and this video will be uploaded later today for you. Thanks again for coming in. If you ever need anything, please feel free to DM me on Facebook, Instagram, or if you have Voxer, you can Vox me. Stay out on my email, please, because it will sit there for a while. And but feel free to reach out to me. And thank you again for participating. Please let me know if you need anything during these uncharted times. And I always like to say, make it a great day. I don't tell people to have a great day because we have to make it a great day. So that's a wrap. Enjoy the rest of your day and go forth.